Hi YouTube, I'm Melissa and I want to talk to you about my academic research project for my English 102 class. We were asked to research folklore or folk tradition or story, and I chose to research Snow White. So I decided to look into the history that's behind that classic fairy tale. Think of the film Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs by Disney, and it's arguably the most popular version of the folktale. But there's so many other variations throughout the globe. This classic fairy tale has really evolved from kind of unknown roots from all over the world. It was really widely popularized by the Grimm brothers and then the Disney film, and it continues to change even today. Snow White is really kind of considered a European fairy tale, but there's evidence of the story's roots all across Africa and Eurasia that it becomes really kind of unclear of where it first originated. And I think that this unclarity really is kind of a testament to the organic process that created the classic. And honestly, regardless of its origins, it's clear that the story has roots in common themes with folktales that have been around for centuries, even dating back to the Middle Ages. It's really important to keep those other influences and cultures in mind whenever you're researching and thinking about Snow White, but at the end of the day, the Grimm brothers deserve a lot of credit. Their version has stuck around for centuries and is probably the most reinterpreted version of the story. Its popularity is kind of the reason that it overshadows the other fairy tales from other cultures. One thing that I think led to the popularity is that they altered the stories a little bit. They took out the erotic and sexual images. They added a lot of Judeo-Christian values and images and stuff into the stories that appealed to a wider audience at the time. And they also wrote down the story. A lot of these other stories are all oral traditions or oral stories, and whenever you actually put it down, it's able to spread and get to more people without being reinterpreted, one, and it just reaches more people in general. The Grimm brothers definitely helped to popularize the story through their written compilation of different folk tales, but the Disney film version is definitely the most well-known today, especially in American culture. The popularity of the film's undeniable. It's the one that most people know whenever you talk to them about Snow White. And I think what Disney was able to do was he Americanized the story. He made it even more children-friendly than the Grimm brothers did, even more family-friendly. It's an animated film. It's meant for families. And these changes and the fact that it was a film appealed and reached to a more broad audience, and was just another medium for people to experience and be exposed to Snow White. In more recent years and in the past century, it's really kind of interesting to note the other ways that Snow White and fairy tales like it have changed. And there's this shift from this really magical and whimsical plot lines and images to a more realistic one. I know one of my favorite examples was the use of the mirror. Instead of having this magical mirror that talks back, the queen actually hears the gossip and things about Snow White and this reassurance from her hairdresser, and he's talking to her through the mirror. So you still have that image of a mirror, it's just not an inanimate object talking to you anymore. One aspect that hasn't really changed from the original tellings is that Snow White goes to sleep after she bites the apple from the poison or whatever. That kind of still has that magic theme to it. But what's happened is that the authors have kind of opened it up for more interpretation. Instead of just saying that she's gone completely asleep and she's not breathing and she's literally just like there. Now they kind of say like she's still breathing, but she's passed out. So you can reinterpret as she's in a coma, she fainted, but they don't explicitly say that, so you can still reinterpret it, or you can still interpret it from a magical aspect, or it could be a more realistic one. One thing that I really took away from my research was just a new understanding for just how influential or how prominent this story is and was in human history, really. It's been around for centuries and centuries, or at least versions and variations of it. Um, and I think there's something to be said for a story that's endured for so long. One of my favorite quotes I found was from Jack Zipes in his book When Dreams Came True. And he said, Snow White is one of those fairy tales whose once upon a time keeps alive our utopian longing for a better world that can be created out of our dreams and actions. And I think that kind of says it all, that people like the story and it appeals to people because everyone has this desire for a happily ever after, and hearing these stories where good trumps evil in the end and good's always going to win out, it's really reassuring. And I think that that's something that people latch onto and really like. And I just think it says a lot about human nature that this story has stuck around for years, that we haven't changed really. You know, deep down, people have always wanted and will always want the same thing. Thank you for listening, and I hope you liked my presentation.